What if I told you that one 24-year-old point guard is single-handedly responsible for a $3.1 billion television deal, 3 brand-new NBA-owned franchises, a full-time private jet fleet, and an actual letter from the United States Congress? This isn't speculation. This isn't a theory. This is happening right now in real time, and by the end of this video you're going to understand exactly how one player from Iowa turned a 29-year-old league upside down, and why some of the WNBA's biggest legends are furious about it. But here's the part almost nobody is talking about. There is a battle happening right now behind closed doors between the league office, the players' union, and Congress itself, over whether Caitlin Clark is being protected too much or not nearly enough. And by the end of this video, you're going to hear about the exact play that made 11 members of Congress write directly to the WNBA Commissioner. Stick around, because that story alone is going to change how you watch every single Fever game from now on. Before we get into it, if you consider yourself a real WNBA fan, drop a comment and let me know you're here. I read every single one, and it genuinely helps this channel grow. Now let's get into it. The league that nobody wanted to pay for. For almost 3 decades, the WNBA existed in the shadow of its bigger brother. Television deals were small. Games were tucked away on niche channels. Players flew commercial, stood in TSA lines with strangers, and dealt with canceled flights like anybody else. It was, for most of its history, a league that had to justify its own existence every single season. Then came the 2024 rookie class, and nothing was ever the same again. Caitlin Clark walked into the league already the most-watched women's basketball player in American history, off the back of a record-shattering college career at Iowa. And almost immediately, the numbers behind the scenes started moving in ways the league had never seen. Here's where it gets interesting, though, because what happened next wasn't just about jersey sales. It was a full corporate transformation, and it started with a number that nobody expected: $2.2 billion. The deal that changed everything. In July 2024, the WNBA signed an 11-year media rights deal with Disney, NBC Universal, and Amazon Prime Video, worth roughly $2.2 billion, about $200 million a year. That might not sound massive compared to the NBA's numbers, but here's the context that makes it insane. It was a 6 times jump from the league's previous television deal, which was worth only about $43 million a year. Let that sink in. 6 times overnight. Commissioner Cathy Engelbert called it a monumental chapter in league history. And under the new agreement, which kicked in for the 2026 season, the league now guarantees more than 125 nationally televised games a season, spread across ABC, ESPN, NBC, Peacock, USA Network, and Amazon Prime Video. But here's the twist nobody predicted. That deal didn't stay at $2.2 billion for long. By May 2026, less than 2 years later, Front Office Sports reported the league's total media rights portfolio, after adding new partners like USA Network and renewing deals with CBS and ION, had ballooned to more than $3.1 billion, with an average annual value of $281 million. That's 6.5 times what the league was making just a few years earlier. And I want you to sit with that number for a second, because we're going to come back to it later in this video, because that television money is directly tied to a decision the league made that has split the entire locker room in half. But first, let's talk about the planes. From middle seats to private charters. For the WNBA's entire existence, up until 2024, teams flew commercial. Long layovers. Cramped economy seats built for athletes half their size. Players sleeping in airports after delayed connections. It became one of the most consistent complaints in the entire league, and in an ESPN player survey, more than half the league said travel was their #1 issue. Then, in May 2024, Commissioner Engelbert announced the league would commit roughly $50 million over 2 seasons, about $25 million a year, to launch a full charter flight program, operated primarily by Delta Airlines. 2-time MVP Breanna Stewart said the change would completely transform recovery after games. Before charters, players had to rush out of arenas and onto commercial flights right after games, with no time for ice baths or proper recovery. Now, as Stewart put it, they'd finally have a plane built around their schedule instead of the other way around. Here's the part that connects everything together, though. The charter program only became financially possible because of the incoming media deal. The league had actually fined teams in the past for chartering flights without permission, The New York Liberty were fined $500,000 in 2022 just for chartering to away games. So this wasn't a small shift. It was the league completely reversing a policy it used to punish teams for breaking. And if you're new here, now's a good time to hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started, and the next section is where things get genuinely controversial. The fight over physicality. Okay, this is the part of the story that has torn the league apart in 2026, and I need you to pay close attention because there are two completely different sides to this, and both of them have a point. Since Clark entered the league, opposing teams have made physical defense against her a core part of their game plan. Coaches have openly admitted it. And the contact hasn't stayed at the level of ordinary hard fouls. In June 2026, Phoenix Mercury forward Alyssa Thomas made contact with Clark's throat during a loose ball scramble. In real time, officials reviewed the play and did not call a flagrant foul. Days later, the league office upgraded it after the fact to a flagrant 2 and suspended Thomas for 1 game. Clark made it clear publicly that she believed the officials got the call wrong in the moment. But here's where the story gets genuinely fascinating, because this wasn't just a basketball disagreement anymore. 11 members of the House Republican Study Committee sent an actual letter to Commissioner Engelbert, giving the league a deadline of July 24, 2026, to respond about the physical treatment Clark has received on the court, citing incidents including being hip-checked, poked in the eye, and struck in the throat. Think about that for a second. Members of the United States Congress writing directly to a professional sports commissioner about how one player is being officiated. That has basically never happened in the history of women's professional sports. Now here's the suspense part 1 promised you at the beginning of this video, because the story doesn't end with Congress. It gets more complicated, because not everyone in the league agrees that Clark is being treated unfairly at all. The veterans push back. While fans, lawmakers, and some coaches have argued Clark needs more protection, a very different group of voices has pushed back hard, and these aren't random critics. These are WNBA legends and all-stars. Sydney Colson, an 11-year veteran and 2-time champion with the Las Vegas Aces, said on ESPN's WNBA Countdown that she didn't view the Alyssa Thomas contact as a flagrant foul at all, explaining that she came up in an era of the league that was simply far more physical than what's being called a major incident today. And it wasn't just Colson. Days earlier, 2025 MVP runner-up Nafisa Collier made pointed public remarks criticizing what she described as the league's officiating problems. Comments the WNBA Players Association publicly applauded and shared on their own platforms. This is the real divide inside the league right now. It's not simply Clark versus the refs. It's an entire generational argument about what kind of league the WNBA should be, the older, physical, defensive style that built the league for decades, versus a faster, more open, higher-scoring product that network partners and new fans are drawn to. The league did respond by forming an officiating task force made up of coaches and executives, and it hired a new referee performance and development advisor. But according to reporting in July 2026, even Clark herself has publicly said the task force has failed to fix the consistency problems, specifically calling for full-time, dedicated officiating crews instead of the rotating system currently in place. So here's the real question hanging over this entire season. Does the WNBA change its entire on-court culture to protect its biggest commercial asset? Or does it risk alienating the very players who built the league's foundation over the last 29 years? Nobody in the league office has fully answered that yet. And we might not get a real answer until the next collective bargaining negotiation. If this kind of behind-the-scenes league drama is what you come here for, make sure you're subscribed, because we track every twist of this story as it happens. A league building itself a new map. While all of this drama plays out on the court, the WNBA has quietly been executing the most aggressive expansion in its history. The Golden State Valkyries tipped off in 2025 as the league's 13th franchise. Then, for the 2026 season, the Toronto Tempo and Portland's new franchise joined, pushing the league to 15 teams. But the league isn't stopping there. In June 2025, the WNBA announced it would expand all the way to 18 teams by the end of the decade, adding Cleveland in 2028, Detroit in 2029, and Philadelphia in 2030. Formal board approval for all three came through in April 2026. Here's a detail that tells you everything about how much the league's value has changed. All three new ownership groups paid a $250 million expansion fee, about 5 times what the Golden State Warriors ownership group paid for the Valkyries just a couple years earlier. 5 times in the span of a couple of seasons. Cleveland's team will be backed by Cavaliers owner Dan Gilbert and will play at Rocket Arena. Detroit's franchise connects directly to the Pistons ownership group. And Philadelphia's team, under Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, will play out of the Wells Fargo Center. This is a league that, just a few years ago, had franchises folding and relocating because they couldn't turn a profit. Now it has NBA ownership groups lining up and paying premium prices to get in. Where this all goes next. So let's connect all the pieces, because this is where the real story lives. A television deal that grew 6.5 times in under 2 years. A charter flight program that reversed decades of league policy. An officiating controversy serious enough to draw a letter from Congress. A generational divide among the players themselves about what kind of league this should even be. And an expansion spree that's added 6 new markets in 5 years, with ownership groups paying 5 times the going rate just to get a seat at the table. None of this happened in a vacuum. It all started the moment one rookie from Iowa walked onto a WNBA court and the ratings didn't just go up. They exploded. The uncomfortable truth is that the WNBA now has to balance 2 things that don't always pull in the same direction. Protecting the player driving unprecedented revenue, and keeping faith with the veterans and the physical, competitive identity that built this league for 29 years before Clark ever arrived. How the league's next CBA negotiation handles that balance is genuinely one of the most important storylines in all of professional sports right now. Not just women's sports. All of sports. And that congressional deadline we talked about earlier? That response is going to set a precedent for how much political and public pressure can actually shape officiating in a professional league. Keep an eye on that because whatever the WNBA decides is going to be studied by other leagues for years. If you want to stay ahead of every twist in this story, the officiating fallout, the new CBA fight, and how these expansion franchises actually shape up, hit subscribe and turn on notifications because this story is nowhere near finished. Drop your take in the comments. Is the WNBA protecting its future or losing what made it great in the first place? I'll see you in the next one.